Have you ever wondered if you were switched at birth? Growing up, did you look at your parents or your siblings and think, yeah, nah, no way did I come from that? Of course, if no one ever told you you were switched, you'd never know, especially if it happened in a time period when DNA testing didn't exist. The 1971 Mushi Productions TV series, Sasarai no Taiyo, starts with the premise of babies getting switched at birth and runs with it, sometimes going completely off the rails. I'm Mecha-May, and today Mew-Bot 5000 and I are going to talk about this histrionic, historic anime series all about girl singers getting switched in the hospital. Sasarai no Taiyo, or Wandering Sun, not to be confused with Wandering Sun, is a 1971 anime series produced by Mushi Pro. It's based on a 4-volume manga that ran in shojo comic in 1970 and 1971, and features early work from Yoshikazu Yasuhiko and Yoshiyuki Tomino, who I think may have worked on some other stuff together too. But I can't remember what it was called. I think it was Doozy Bots or something. Anyway, Wandering Sun is kind of a non-consensual prince and the pauper. It isn't exactly making a nature versus nurture argument. It's more of a, what if the most deranged individual in the world pulled a prank out of a misplaced sense of revenge, then waited nearly 18 years to do anything with it argument. The series starts right off with the old switcheroo being made by the psychologically disordered Michiko Nohara, who places a baby born into a poor family with a rich family, and the baby born into the rich family into the first baby's poor family. For reasons. Completely deranged and disordered reasons, but reasons. The girl sent to the rich house is named Miki, and the girl in the poor house is our heroine, Nozomi. And beginning in their last year of high school, Michiko puts the two girls in adversarial positions by placing poor Nozomi into Miki's fancy school, making sure they're in the same class. Why she waited so long I couldn't tell you, because as a little robot girl, I'm unequipped to explain the actions of a blue-skinned weirdo. When the story begins, you assume Michiko has some grand, elaborate, Machiavellian scheme worked out, but as time goes on, it becomes clear she has no idea where she's going with this. She sows distrust between Miki and Nozomi by making anonymous phone calls to Miki, warning her about Nozomi and making really vague statements about the two of them. Miki thinks Nozomi's behind the mysterious calls and immediately becomes antagonistic towards her. By pure chance, both girls have musical talent, but Miki is lazy and spoiled and always uses money and her family's influence to get ahead, whereas Nozomi works hard to earn her success. Right off the bat, the two are pitted against each other in their music class as they compete to write a class song. Nozomi puts a lot of thought and guitar time into writing what becomes her signature song, Song of the Heart, and Miki just pays a guy to write something, which results in hilarity when he steals Nozomi's song, not realizing that Nozomi and Miki would both be performing their songs in front of their class. This show takes place long before the economic bubble period of the go-go 80s, in a Japan that's still pretty bleak, and is surprisingly realistic about the pitfalls of the music biz. In a way, a straight line starting with this show can be drawn depicting the evolution of cute anime girl singing idols. The heroine of Wandering Sun, Nozomi Mine, predates the idol concept though, and is more of a folksy singer-songwriter and always does a lot of really cornball enka-type ballads. This isn't too surprising, since the original story was apparently inspired by the celebrated enka singer of the early 1970s, Keiko Fuji, who's also the mother of celebrated J-pop artist of the 1990s and aughts, Hikaru Utada. She probably wasn't switched at birth with anyone though. Probably. Anyway, Nozomi starts singing in local bars to entertain drunk sad sacks to earn money for her impoverished family, whose main source of income is the noodle stand run by her father. While Nozomi does enjoy a Cinderella-style success story eventually, she endures a load of compromise and on the road to her horizon that any budding rhinestone cowboy or cowgirl can identify with if they spend enough time in the brutal existence that is professional performance. Both Nozomi and Miki begin taking singing lessons from a star-making instructor named Igawa, who only takes Miki on for the money, but takes on Nozomi because of her natural talent, can-do attitude, and the fact that she'll work as his housekeeper in exchange for lessons. Igawa is yet another weirdo, and I've gotta say, this series is rife with adult characters who are just plain nuts. About halfway through the story, Nozomi meets a famous songwriter named Jun, who creeps creepily on our barely of-age heroine. He also comes to recognize Nozomi's talent and potential, and flings himself and his songs at her for a while, until his sister interferes. Because it turns out, Michiko is his sister. Michiko forces them to get Nozomi a job with an extremely sketchy music label because June had stolen money from Michiko years in the past. You know you're in trouble when the larcenous creep is the sane, successful member of your family. This sets Nozomi up on a tour of podunk Japan, which isn't quite wandering, but it's at least wandering adjacent. On her tour, she meets a variety of music industry has-beens and never-wases, getting a glimpse into the possible future for anyone who lets their guard down for even an instant in this cutthroat business. Eventually, she finds out the label sponsoring the tour have no intention of ever paying her, despite overworking her and causing her to nearly lose her voice. They force her back on the train to continue the tour despite this, until she contacts a lawyer and demands immediate termination of the contract and payment of all back fees. No, just kidding. She jumps off the moving train to get away from them. Luckily, a friend of her parents who's been weirdly following her tour all over Japan happens to be walking along the very same tracks, finds her and carries her all the way back to Tokyo on foot. They don't make small-time thugs like they used to, that's for sure. Nozomi's impresario Egawa banishes her from his house after she gets back from the tour, because she signed with the shady company without his approval. He immediately regrets it, but he doesn't ask for her to come back because he's a huge dick, which again is a pretty realistic music industry detail. Miki is about to make her debut single by this time, so she hires Nozomi to be her personal assistant. She looks at it as an opportunity to belittle and humiliate Nozomi some more, but she also learns a valuable lesson. Never hire someone prettier than you to be your assistant. That's okay, having Nozomi dress up like a technician in a fancy cosmetic clinic will fix all that. Nozomi still desperately needs money for her father's hospital bills, so she appears on a TV singing contest and wins the big prize. So Egawa finally comes crawling back and asks her to be his housekeeper again. It's okay though, he also agrees to resume her singing lessons by giving her questionable and dangerous tasks that are supposed to help, like making her dive for clams. That's not a metaphor, she's literally diving for clams. Then, he sends her to Yokohama to sing in a bar whose only clientele is Americans, presumably GIs stationed in Yokohama, all of whom absolutely hate cornball Anki ballads. Growing a thick skin is an important part of being a successful performer, but this seems a little excessive, even in the anime genre of insane extreme training. Also, the way they introduce the patronage of this particular nightclub is, really something. Japanese takes on Western social issues in anime is a whole other subject, though. Nozomi continues working for Miki during all this, despite the fact that her appearance on the TV contest paid her family's hospital bills, I guess proving the belief that shojo heroines are all gluttons for punishment. Finally, Nozomi decides to quit working for Miki, and in return, Miki tells Nozomi that Nozomi's boxer boyfriend Fanny is actually her brother. Oh, I didn't tell you about Fanny yet. The truth is, I could probably skip talking about him entirely, and it wouldn't change much. This is a quirk of shoujo anime and manga. Think about it. When the story's focus is on the heroine's career, the boyfriend is really just eye candy, whose main function is to provide emotional support and cheer our girl on. So anyway, Fanny's a dreamboat boxer who runs away for a long stretch of the series because he's the long-lost child of the Mine family, who they put up for adoption because they were even poorer back then. So he thinks he's Nozomi's biological brother. So he disappears on a slow boat to America for a long time, leaving a note on his scarf as Nozomi's only source of that valuable boyfriend resource, emotional support. Once Miki spills the beans that Fanny is Nozomi's older brother, except he isn't really, he's Miki's older brother, but neither of them know it yet. I think I need to lie down. No, I'm fine. Finding out she almost made whoopee with her brother sends Nozomi into an existential crisis, as it probably would for anyone, so you'll never guess what she does. Yes, finally, in episode 21 of a 26-episode series, the titular wandering finally begins in earnest. This involves a lot of going into bars and getting thrown out of bars, which I guarantee you is a thing that would 100% happen in real life to anyone wandering into a bar with a guitar slung around their shoulder, offering to sing for the patrons. Since this is a kid's cartoon, though, there's 100% less ass-grabbing and boob-groping than there would be in real life. Nozomi spends a few episodes traveling here and there in remote parts of Japan, singing her Song of the Heart often enough that it becomes like an urban legend in rural Japan. Eventually, she makes friends with a rock group on their way to a folk festival, which was unavoidable because it's 1971. They encourage her to perform her song with their band, and the crowd eats it up, despite the fact that it sounds exactly the same as it does when she performs solo. After this, her song becomes requested all over the country, even in Tokyo, completely by word of mouth, even though the record companies have no idea who she is yet. This drives Miki and her mom nuts, so they announce Nozomi's name as the writer of the Song of the Heart, hoping to destroy the mystique, which of course backfires pretty spectacularly. But not as spectacularly as Michiko's final gambit, which is calling a press conference. Yes, an actual press conference. "Hello, New Music Express, Rolling Stone. I'm the deranged sister of a famous songwriter, and I'd like to... Fine, I'll be camera ready in 10 minutes. So, she announces publicly the big secret that Nozomi actually belongs to the wealthy Koda family, and Miki, who's now a famous pop star, actually belongs to the destitute Mine family, and they were switched at birth and she's the one what switched them. This causes obvious distress to all parties involved, as both families are now beset by the bottom-feeding ecosystem of the tabloid press, and also has the added bonus of getting Michiko arrested for committing what I assume is a fairly serious crime. I'm just assuming. Most people don't like when their baby is switched with another baby, right? Even if it's a baby that's roughly equal in value, I understand it causes a lot of problems. It probably didn't do any favors to her brother June's career either, but they don't expound much on it. Now you might be wondering, what horrifying torture did Michiko endure that drove her to mess with the lives of two complete strangers and their families in the first place? Well, here's the story. When she was a teenager, she had a rich boyfriend who dumped her for a rich girl. No, that's it. That's the whole story. Anyway, Miki is hit especially hard by the news that she really was switched at birth with Nozomi, thinking among other things that the parents who raised her, doted on her, and spoiled her all these years won't love her anymore. Plus, Mine Papa, her actual birth father, chooses that exact moment to finally die, and frankly, I can't blame him. So, Miki has her own little existential crisis and does what any red-blooded shoujo antagonist faced with the reality of her situation would do and walks into the ocean. I gotta hand it to her, she's been a real piece of work through this whole story, but I do feel sorry for her here. Luckily, the ocean didn't want her, so she's fished out and sent to a local hospital, where Nozomi goes to her bedside with Koda Papa, Nozomi's birth father. The two families come together and they all become friends, and maybe they'll all move into a big house together and live like the Brady Bunch. Who knows? A thing I really like about this show is that the villains eventually show contrition for their actions. Even the hate-filled Michiko feels genuine remorse when it's all said and done. It's moving and very humanizing to see characters who were once antagonistic putting it all aside and growing as people, offering and accepting love instead of acting it out of malice and insecurity. Even I would find it heartwarming if I only had a heart. The premise leads me to wonder how both girls would have turned out had they not been switched. Would Nozomi have become lazy and entitled with her rich parents and failed to meet her full potential? I think we're meant to believe Nozomi wouldn't have turned out as bratty as Miki did, but her bio mom is kind of a bee, and Nozomi certainly must carry some of that in her DNA. Isn't it just as likely that, given her strong will, Nozomi could have ended up a much bigger monster than Miki? Maybe Michiko did the right thing after all. A less generous read of the story might be that Nozomi, a girl from a wealthy family, is inherently superior to Miki, born into a poor family, and that Nozomi would have been prettier, nicer, and more talented and successful regardless of her circumstances. I don't think that was the author's intentions, though, and the way the story ends doesn't really bear that out. Art-wise, some of the characters are more Mushi Pro than others, and although Yoshikazu Yasuhiko did early design work on the show, his later distinctive style hadn't yet come to fruition. Neither look anything like the original manga either, which has the typical huge starry-eyed look of other shoujo manga of its day. The entire Wandering Sun TV series can be found with a great fan dub on the dark web, and if you love shoujo melodrama, you'd do well to check it out. If you don't love shoujo melodrama, can you even be said to be alive? It definitely feels like they had to wrap it up quick near the end, as though they were expecting the wandering part to go on a lot longer, but it's a delightful show, both in spite of and because of the crude 1971 animation and design. It also features a lot of inside baseball musical references and cameos for all you folks out there who are fans of early 1970s Japanese pop music. Give it a watch, you won't regret it. At least not as much as you'd regret switching babies in the hospital. If you've watched Wandering Sun, let me know what you think about it in the comments. Until next time, this is the Mecha-May and Mew-Bot Show, signing off.